Welcome, Nanna Salver, to our Mastery series. I'm so excited to have our immersion members learn so much about pleasure and coming back to the body, coming home to ourselves in a pleasurable way and demystifying, what pleasure means for people and just, I don't know, connecting to ourselves. So I'm so excited to have you here. Nana is an amazing human being, postpartum counselor, Strala yoga teacher. She does beautiful ceremonies for women, retreats, so many things. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
I I just want to dive right in. So for me, like when I was thinking about who I wanted for this interview for this month, we're focusing a lot on like, yeah, our body's our temple, our body's our home. And I was thinking like, okay, we can say that all we want, but like what do we actually mean? Like and how do you do that? How do you actually access that place? And
Mm,
I just thought like you'd be so amazing for that because you really are like you walk the talk of like, yeah, how do I access pleasure? You have two kids. Like, how do you access pleasure when your body was kind of like taken in some ways and create
mm,
life for somebody else, and that little being wants your body and what your body offers in some ways. So I feel like you could relate so much to that, and you can share from the experience of like, yeah, what is pleasure for you, I guess. So on a
mm,
foundational level, like how do you describe pleasure currently?
mm. Yeah, because currently I think is an important word because it's like developing a lot into the seasons you are in, I think, as a woman, exactly. Especially like for me, like you said, becoming a mother, it changed a lot around what I understand of pleasure. Um,
Hmm.
so it's really been like a central theme in my life, especially I think the last 2 years, because I became very disconnected to pleasure.
Mm.
Most really a lot in the sense of like sensuality, sexuality, intimacy, and desire, but then later also understanding how that connects to just that feeling of being alive and like feeling playful and feeling free really in your body and yourself. And I think that was like the connection I didn't quite understand,
Mm.
somehow getting lost in motherhood and like very functionality of the body.
Mm.
Mm.
Mhm.
And then it's been like a process of coming back to that. It still is very much for me because I'm still very like my kids are 2 and 5, so I am still very functional in my
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
Eh, but I'm trying really like to prioritize pleasure in the sense of playfulness, like intimacy as well. What makes me feel safe now in this body? What makes me feel like I can surrender? I think that's a big part of it. Surrender really into my body and getting
Mm-hmm.
out of my head
Mm-hmm.
where pleasure is found. Yeah.
So tell me, so let's like go back a bit in history and then we'll come back because yeah, everything that you're saying, I'm like, yeah, it's just, the keywords of like surrendering and kind of like tuning into the body with like what makes you feel alive and like using that as pleasure. But how did you even get onto this journey? Like with wanting to kind of be someone that can represent pleasure in a way that feels like accessible to people and that doesn't feel like, I would say one of the big myths of pleasure is like, oh, it's sexual, like that's it,
Yeah.
right? And so, maybe earlier adult self, or maybe even when you were a teenager, it's like, what does that version of Nana, like, how did she come to this place of being like, oh no, this is what pleasure is, like what you just shared with me?
Yeah. That, I mean, that's a whole like the whole story of like becoming a woman, right? Like, I think I actually don't think I thought pleasure as equal to sex. I think I didn't even think maybe sex wasn't even pleasurable, right?
Well,
So earlier, like when I think back, maybe I thought it was, but then like becoming older and wiser and like more rooted into my body really. I think I experience way more pleasure now than I
Mm,
did as a young woman
mm,
because it was way more like performative,
yeah.
um, and and not very present. I think that's really also what I've learned, that it's pleasure is about being present
Mm,
with what is. So for me, that journey obviously is has a lot to do with getting into the yoga and the Strala yoga in specific, because I was 23 when I took my training, and I was pregnant first time.
mm,
When I went on that journey on like diving deeper into the philosophies of Strala yoga, which has a lot to do with softness and ease. Like that is the two main principles of the movement. So
mhm,
softness, I think, really is pleasure.
mm,
Like I think that was the beginning of it, understanding softness, practicing softness, moving with softness, and
mhm,
then letting that expand to all other areas of my life. And then only like later on, I think maybe, yeah, like the past 2 years, understanding that connection to this is also has something to do with pleasure, both just in being in general and in the like connection to my partner and connection to myself.
mm. Did,
Yeah.
do you think for you then pleasure was something that it was like it appeared in your life when you like were in a relationship or when you were like pregnant, let's say,
Mm.
for people that let's say maybe they're not in a relationship, maybe, not having kids isn't for them or something like that. Like how would they kind of know that they're at a place in their life, like at this kind of pivot point where I don't know, pleasure's like knocking on the door and being like, hey, like let's have a newer, different relationship, because I think we are told a lot, like not only could we think pleasure is sexual or something, but also I think people think pleasure is something that we earn, like we have to like deserve
Yeah, for
to like
sure.
earn it and deserve it, and like when we
Yeah.
work hard, or it's like too indulgent, too selfish, like to kind
Yeah.
of be, yeah, or taboo in some way, especially for women. It's a bit more like, what are you talking about? If you dabble in pleasure, you're like a slut or something. Like
Mhm.
there's like so many
Yeah.
things. So I think, somebody that's kind of on that road, how do
Mm.
they how would they know, like, oh, this is an invitation for me to kind of start to view pleasure in this way? Like, what are some of the things that might be coming up for them that feel a bit like, I don't know, they're thinking of pleasure in a way that doesn't feel sustainable or something.
Yeah, I think, yeah, how does it show up? I mean, definitely like those myths you talk about, that pleasure is more like something like luxury than a necessity.
Hmm.
I guess that's usually you learn it the hard way, right? That it's like you find yourself somewhere in life where you are a where you're disconnected. I think most people feel that at some point, right? Like disconnected from something, and like that that connection to yourself or those around you or your body, and like what is the meaning of it all.
Yeah.
um, and I can also remember that from earlier age, like just being a young woman and feeling at that point like I'm okay, I'm going to university, I'm doing like all the things, I'm living a normal life, but something is missing, like that
Hmm. Mm.
more thing, that like what is it that makes me come alive. um and that had nothing to do with a sexual relationship. That was just that, like noticing that something felt off or disconnected. And I
Hmm.
think that can show up in so many ways. Some kind of feeling lost, or some kind of feeling tense, like attention in
Yeah.
some,
Yeah.
where really, like this is where softness and like pleasure is the opposite, right? Like it's inviting some ease into that tension, which is
Hmm.
like, it sounds also very abstract, and that's been like the whole process of finding out what that looks like for you. For me, that's been a lot movement oriented.
Yeah.
um So in ways I'm moving, like the ways I'm carrying my body, caring for my body.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that was what I started doing back then when I felt lost and disconnected as a young woman. And then going into like women's circles as well, like hearing, listening to other stories and women in different seasons of their lives. I found so inspiring and very like it can show up in so many ways.
Mm. Yeah, and I love that too. Like that's like what you're sharing about kind of with pleasure being like pleasure can look like, being in a conversation with other women and being able to listen and get curious and maybe, feel inspired about a conversation. Like that's pleasure. Like for me, you're talking about movement. Like I remember kind of coming from a really strict like private school focused on like, yeah, pleasure was never something that wasn't a word,
Oh,
that was
exactly.
ever like brought up in life, which is like you think about it now, and I think about I'm just like, wow, pleasure is like our birthright to be able to experience it, especially as women. It's like the more that we can access pleasure, the more that we're probably like, watch out, world. It's like if we can live from that pleasurable place, like you mentioned, like pleasure is presence, like that's such a beautiful way to remember it. But yeah, for me, it's, before movement came into my life, like, I mean, intuitive movement, embodiment kind of thing, I felt like pleasure was more, I found it in like joy, like, oh,
Yeah,
like being like a little kid again, like playing at the beach just for fun, or, singing a song at the top of my lungs in my car,
yeah,
eating food that felt like, oh, this is, like ice cream on a sunny day or something. So there, yeah, there are tons of different ways that pleasure can show up. Can you think of a couple more that like you've seen, with some of your clients or with retreats that you've led, like how pleasure can show up for people, like, movement, joy, like conversations with women. Are there any other that come to mind for you?
yeah. I think a big one is rest as well, because
Oh,
like we like you also mentioned like all this unlearning, right, of pleasure as a luxury or like an indulgent thing or something that doesn't even exist. And I think rest is really the same. We all have a lot of like conditioning around laziness or like being not productive and being not efficient or like not live up to the norms, like the cultural expectations of you. So
hmm
that's why I see most women I work with struggle a lot with resting. Just pure, simple rest, like lay down and put your feet up, and close your eyes for a second or stare out into the air. Like it's we don't do that. There's never
hmm
space for that. And I think there's a lot of gold to find in that space. Like if you start prioritizing rest as a radical act, as
hmm
something I'm choosing very actively to do nothing now.
Yeah.
But even listen to a podcast or listen to or read a book or like that's the pauses we get maybe in between it all. But when do you just stare out into the open air, like not doing anything?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what happens when you do that? I
Mm.
just I now I've been working. That's a part of my projects has been facilitating rest sessions, um,
hmm
and that's been so interesting to see what comes up. And for many, I think again that's the you become present with what is, and
Yeah.
then you notice maybe some deeper needs or something you like something in your body you didn't notice before, or like thoughts coming up, and there's so much that can happen in those like in between moments,
Mm.
and also all like the discomfort
Yeah.
obviously also shows up at that point.
Yeah, so I would love for you to share about the project because I think it's really amazing. Before you do that, yeah, discomfort came up for me or for somebody that's like maybe like busyness is a way to keep them
Mm.
out of the present because the present feels hard. Because I think it's like at the end of the day, like being present with what is probably one of the hardest things that we can do as a society because what is currently isn't always like what we want, what we strive to have, what we thought it would be like, what the relationship should have been like, and it's not currently or whatever. So how do people try and practice that? To access pleasure, there has to be some form of presence. And if presence is scary for people or it's hard to be like, I don't have time to sit in my shit,
Yeah.
I don't want to, or it feels too
Yeah.
hard, or what if da da da. Like,
Yeah.
what do you say to that, or what's kind of your encouragement around that?
Mm, I think pleasure needs safety, right? Like
Mm,
it's really a matter of feeling safe. And so in that way, it's if you are in a place where that feels where it's related to discomfort or like being stillness can be scary, right? And be I also found sometimes when I've struggled most in my life, like when my nervous system has been completely out of balance, it's been impossible to use those tools I might found helpful other times in my life, like meditation or like yoga and like some of those like more slow
mhm,
practices.
mm,
Because when if you are stressed or like burned out or depleted like a lot of people are, that's not always the most easy
mm,
starting point.
yeah.
I think then it's a matter of like nervous system regulation in other ways. Obviously I think you practice that right as well in
Mhm.
different embodiment forms. Like it can be more useful to shake or to actually move it out, like that stagnant energy. And then after that, you can rest. And
Mm,
rest is also so much more than being like lying down and sleep or like take a nap. It's so
yeah.
much more. It can be active or it's like sensory rest, or it's like it can also be social if
Yeah.
you depending on the scene, right? It's I think there's still a lot like development into that whole talk about like how we understand what it means to rest and also pleasure in that sense.
Hmm.
So pleasure needs in that if it's hard to be still, it needs to start so small. Like I always would encourage like filling your senses, like a
Hmm.
felt sense awareness, which can be that cup of tea you have in the morning or like a cup of coffee. Like, how can you make that more pleasurable?
Yeah.
Looking at your life suddenly, like with a new perspective. Okay, all that I do from I wake up to I go to bed, where are there possibility for small moments of tuning into my senses? So really, really noticing that warmth in your hands from the cup and the sip you take, and maybe take those 2 minutes to just look around you, like look up to the sky, smell the sensations coming
Mm,
from that
mm,
moment. Yeah. And or
yeah.
like the shower you take, I think is also a very good practice. When I work with mothers mostly around pleasure, the shower, like a central shower practice is also where we start,
Hmm.
because you can always make space to take a shower and then
Yeah.
you're in private and
Yeah.
you can do anything else. You don't have your phone, you
Yeah.
don't have any distractions, you're just there. So it's a really good place to just start practicing that presence with noticing the water coming to your body. How
Yeah.
does it feel when it hits your skin? What do you notice when you like touch yourself, touching your body, not just like washing yourself quickly and get over with, but
Mm,
actually taking the time just to notice and feel the touch of your hands and the water. I think that's a really useful practice to start small and somewhere where it feels safe and familiar as well.
mm. Gosh, I love that. And I think, and it also is kind of, it reminds me a lot of like just little by little is a lot, like little by little becomes a lot and it kind of like adds up. So it's just thinking about, yeah, these small little steps of like, and even if, because yeah, like I can be the one that's like, rushing through a shower because I have to, or because my kid is like on the floor there and waiting for me to come out or whatever. But I think about like, a sensual practice to kind of bring pleasure within the shower, even if there's a rush, is, sometimes I'll just place my hand on one part of my body, so it doesn't even have like what you're talking about is, something light, something small, right? But it's like, yeah, I could just put my hands on my shoulders and that
Mm,
feels helpful to like press down on and just kind of feel like, oh, relax, I'm like up here sometimes, like, I have so much to do, like, and that feels like a pleasurable experience. And it
yeah.
reminds me what you're sharing about, like with the seasons, and like, winter and now like we're both in Spain, so it's like the flowers here are just so abundant and so like luscious right now. They had a lot of rain, but the winter, like it's that time of rest. And so
Mm,
it's like it needed that time to be able to flourish what it's now flourishing. And like, you know what I mean? And I think that's something to always remember. Like we'll just forget where that's why people have ideas in the shower because like you said, there's nothing else to do, but they're like there's a moment of pause. And in the moment of pause is when we actually have the experience of joy, the experience of insight, the experience of like, that was a big lesson I just realized. And,
mm,
and I'm in the shower. What? Like,
yeah, yeah.
so you mentioned the kind of sensual experience in the shower. What's one for you? Is it movement? Is that kind of your practice of pleasure that you kind of swear by? Is there something currently that you're really loving?
Mm. Yeah, I think if it's one thing I would swear by it would be like free dancing or movement. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think music is so helpful, uh,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you feel very connected, because most of us know a song or a piece of music that brings some form of emotion or like some form of you know um, a, a need to move, or you just you go with the flow of the music. So I think that's like thinking of just one song that maybe, and you can think of like the vibe you need. So for me it would be like, okay, if I want to connect to pleasure, for me it should be a piece of music, like a song that has some softness to it, so
Mm,
that it invites me to explore that in my body. And then I would be like just closing my eyes and start moving. When it was the hardest parts of like, if I felt most disconnected, that would always be a possibility, because it always felt easy. It felt like I can do it anywhere, anytime. I just need a piece of music. I can have my kids around me, even
mhm.
running, playing. They don't need to be quiet. Like we can all dance for this
Yeah.
moment, but make it mine. Like it's not our moment, it's my moment still.
Mm,
Just to close my eyes and move with the music. And sometimes this is like standing still and just shaking one hand,
mhm.
just swaying, like swaying side to side, moving a little bit like with my hips.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's bigger and more like I need to be big in my movements and come all the way out to the sides.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something just it feels very available, what
Mhm.
is present at that moment with
Mhm.
music, just pure like intuitive movement. And
Yeah.
it needs to be like, you don't need to know any tools, like be a yoga teacher or anything for
Mm.
that. We can all do that.
Which I would say is also like kind of a myth too. It's like, yeah, that's something that somebody like a yoga teacher or something would be able to access more quickly or something. But it's like it is a practice, like anything. It's a muscle that we
Yeah.
need to build is accessing pleasure and being able to indicate to our brain like that's pleasurable and that's pleasurable and that's also pleasurable. Like it doesn't have to be just like one thing or one way. When when people, I could think of a couple clients that maybe it's like if I take them through some guided practice where I'm asking them to imagine a bit more, I'm hearing with
Mm.
you like the free flow, I sometimes like clients will be like, what, or they do this thing and they're like, I didn't really feel much. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know how to I didn't feel anything. Like how would you, yeah, how do you help even, women like postpartum women like like get back to a, just for everybody get back to a place of like how can I learn to feel if I'm not feeling or if I feel kind of numb and I'm trying to access this pleasurable moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question, and also I think it's very individual, right?
Yeah.
It's really depending on your situation, and like numbness is definitely, yeah, that can be more tricky. But I don't know. I think for postpartum women, I would always like it's often, or for most women, I think it's mostly a matter of getting out of your head, right? You're overthinking it,
Yeah.
overthinking. Okay, free flow movement. What is that? Like, how does it look? Okay, it looks a specific way maybe for you, or it should.
Yeah.
All these like, then you've seen a woman on Instagram moving like that, and you feel that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like I think for many it's easier when you get together with other women because you kind of see like at least that's my experience. Maybe it was hard showing up then that day, but then for them, like I always would guide them some kind of movement and maybe even like ending a yoga practice. Yoga, we know what it is, but then ending with some free dancing,
Mm-hmm.
which if I had said that out loud, maybe people wouldn't come, but then suddenly it just happened.
Mm.
Then it's like, it's pretty fascinating to see how people then access that in their bodies. Like it's for many, okay, maybe you just stand still. You close your eyes and you just stand still and
Yeah.
you don't move a lot. But then maybe you look around sometimes. You just open one eye and you see another woman like really moving like in ways you've never imagined. And she's just doing it in it.
Yeah.
And then that's just a small like beginning of I think like again surrendering, like releasing the perfectionism and the overthinking and the like it needs to look a certain way or it needs to feel a certain way. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's all about your body and how it feels in you.
Mm.
And that's also how I guide movement. Like it's never, I actually don't really want people to do what I do, like a guide. I want them to do what feels comfortable in their body.
Yeah.
It's always what I'm trying to cue on, like with it's also a lot about breath, right? You can always start just by breathing
Yeah.
and, and see what that brings to your body.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if that answered. I think I mean, if there's trauma and, different background stories, it's always different what people need. But I think this is definitely, I think we all need that. Like, I think we can all access that getting out of our head and into our bodies. And for some, it just, you need to be like, you need to be challenging yourself a bit sometimes as well.
Yeah, there's kind of this like yeah, stretching our capacity a bit and I think it's like it could be very, very little, like a tiny,
Yeah.
1 inch, 1 centimeter kind of movement towards anything. And I think always coming back to like, okay, I feel safe in this. I feel safe in my body in this moment. I think about it reminds me of like I used to have lots of flying anxiety, but I would like travel. I traveled my whole life since I was a baby. And I was like, what just happened? Right. But at one point when I was in my teens, early 20s, I was like, oh my God, I'm so afraid of flying. I think I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And, someone told me like, just keep focusing on like, okay, ask yourself in this moment, and am I okay? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Am I? Kind of. I'm okay, I guess. Like, I'm not dying, but I'm uncomfortable. And then
Yeah.
and then I would have to ask again
Okay.
and again and again and again. And it's like, but eventually it was like every 10 minutes asking myself, and then every 20. And like now it's like maybe once in a flight, I'll be like, am I okay right now in this moment? Okay, I'm a little bit uncomfortable, but so I
Yeah.
think that's a good visual too for people to kind of think about like
Yeah.
safety doesn't have to, we don't have to like immediately feel safe in what we're
No,
doing.
exactly. We don't have to feel amazing doing that. Like it's okay that it's not comfortable. It's okay, but that's why it can be really powerful to witness others be
Mm.
in their bodies, because it's like, for many it's not something we might have seen or have had access for before. Like I remember that for myself, being like, it's so fascinating to see other women just owning their bodies, right?
Yeah.
If you are in a point where that's hard for yourself, and we're all in different like processes of that.
Mm.
And I always say also, like, in any form of movement, it's about like moving like you love yourself. So it needs to be, movement needs to come from a caring approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We can never feel really good in our bodies if it's forcing. And I think that's what a lot of movement becomes for people. It becomes like a need to do, or like a should do, and like a, then I'm gonna go to the gym and work out, and that's my movement.
Yeah.
Where the form I'm talking about, or like I'm practicing and teaching, that has so much more to do about connection to yourself. And that's not about how it looks or how you will look from that, right? Like, it's not,
Mm.
in order to get to a goal, the goal is to feel good while doing it
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
itself.
No, I love that. And yeah, and I want to, and I think kind of a nice way to kind of end this part of it is to talk actually about the project that you mentioned earlier around
Yeah.
the
Right.
rest. Because I think overall theme, it's just funny, like coming into this, I thought like, pleasure and like, yeah, movement. And we are talking about that. But really, I think what stands out to me the most is that like rest, which can happen at some point, like rest can be in the shower, rest can be 2 minutes when you're drinking your coffee, rest can be, closing your eyes for 5 minutes. Like rest is such a beautiful way to access pleasure. And it's probably the safest way to access
Mm,
it, the way that we
mm.
can feel the safest when we do rest. We're kind of in like okay, I feel safe enough. So, yeah, could you kind of like summarize this amazing project you're doing and, maybe an insight that people have had from experiencing this and how it's kind of related to pleasure?
Yeah. So what we do, it's called nap time, because it came from like, okay, taking a nap is like, it has a lot of stigma around it, right? And like, especially in the day, I'm from Denmark, and the Danish language, it's like, you have some sayings where it's lazy or it's negative, and it's not what people do. It's
Yes.
something you do for your kids.
Yeah.
Like, as mothers, you give so much awareness and attention to the nap for your child, but you can never give that to yourself. Like, that's where it started from. That, like, that awareness we give our children's rest, sacred, very, very, very sacred rest,
Yeah.
right? Why do we not give that to ourselves?
Hmm.
So we started creating like resting sessions, and it's always for groups. Like, it's for, in the beginning it was like drop in rest sessions where we put like beds up everywhere, for people, so setting the scene, the
Yeah.
room, super foundational for that, like the right temperature, the right music, clean, crisp sheets, all of these, like, again, the senses, so you can fully relax.
Yeah.
Then you step into this room and you simply lie down, and it's in when we started, it's for 2 hours. And there's only the first 30 minutes we guide like a meditation, like a body connection, dropping into your body. We have
Mhm.
calming music playing, and then we walk around, like putting our hands on people's bodies, so like a safe, grounding touch.
So nice.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. And it's, for many, like, that part of it it stands out, like, whoa, when you came and put your hands on my body, it was like I melted down to the floor, like I had that last push, kind of, to
Mm.
let my body know, okay, now I can surrender.
Hmm.
But then it's so different how people do surrender, right? Like, for some it's so hard for
Yeah.
2 hours, and they came to challenge that, and like because how often do we get a chance to step into a room like that where the only expectation of you is that you are here lying down. You don't even need to sleep.
Yeah.
Rest was just, it's just about setting 2 hours for nothing. You're not doing anything. And so many people just lie and stare up in the ceiling, or they like turn around a little bit. Someone sometimes brings their journal and like write down thoughts. For some, they are just out in a second. They're just sleeping for two
Yeah.
hours so heavily that we need to wake them up.
Wow.
So it's really, and that depends so much on where you are in life, maybe, but most people are tired.
Mm.
And maybe they are surprised by how tired they are when they then allow themselves to go into that facilitated room where it's the only thing we do and where you cannot just take up your phone. And
Yeah.
for me, that's also been a big part of learning about the pleasure that brings, like facilitating this room where, okay, the first 30 minutes I'm active, I'm guiding, I'm holding the space. But then for 1.5 hours, I'm actually just sitting there, like still holding the space, but I'm just being there, like looking at people sleeping. And that was in the beginning really hard. I
Yeah.
was like, now I should be like creating some content or, like doing something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
then and then I slowly leaned into it also, like, oh yeah, I need to do the same thing. I
Mm-hmm.
need to just let go.
Mm-hmm.
That was it taught me a lot. Like it was so noticeable how rare that is in my life. Like I was like, I cannot even remember. Like we don't even sit and stare out the window when we take the train, right? Then we look down in our
Yeah.
phones,
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a podcast going or something.
Yeah.
So it was pretty wild to experience. And
Mm.
also for people. But then also like really, really hard to get people to come,
Yeah.
because that's the first step, right? Like act actively prioritizing that
Mm-hmm.
deep, deep rest. Um, so it's a very like we call it like a rest revolution, because it is very like it is a like an anti-production productivity movement. So
Yeah.
it is that way also political. Or rest becomes political in that sense in the world we live in.
Yeah. And it's so crazy. Yeah. And my partner and I always joke that we like when we sleep more, like now that we have a small baby, like when we have more rest, we have more energy to like get in an argument sometimes, like because we're just like there's more energy, there's like more capacity, there's more creativity, like
Yeah,
and I think that we try to laugh about it, but it's like it's true. It's like we obviously there's so many benefits of resting, but I think coming
yeah.
back to the pleasure of it, it's like you being able to witness people like observing is its own form of pleasure, you know.
Mm,
I go to the airport and love people watching. It's like my favorite thing to do and like that brings me pleasure. So it's like I think there are so many
yeah.
ways that people listening can really, the members can really think about like how does pleasure
Mm.
yeah, how can I find pleasure in anything that I'm doing, whether that's watching, my dog sleep, my child sleep, whether it's just me sitting here and staring at a tree, whether it's yeah, doing something that
Just
feels
the
more like a
small moments.
right.
Because we all have them. We all have access to them. It's just like the part of noticing, like
Yeah.
opening your eyes to
Yeah.
what is in front of you, really. And we can get so locked in like on to work or whatever is right in front of us, or like the next thing, like the next
Mhm.
project, the next, so we forget what is right around us. Um,
Mhm.
and that's definitely a big like life practice for me as well, to just stop and pause for a moment, or notice those like small moments of pleasure all around.
Like, yeah, just opening our eyes and being like, wow, that's pleasure. The flowers blooming are pleasure. Like the way, you hear, I don't know. Yeah, I just think,
Yeah,
yeah,
because you notice how does it make you feel? Like when you actually take your time to look at that flower. Oh, it might bring some kind of sensation in your body. And that's again a part of the pleasure, right? Because you drop into your body just like that without doing like bodily practices.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
still it becomes a connection.
Yeah. And I think that could be helpful for people, like, when they're listening, to remember too that if the more we can indicate to our brain that that's what we're looking for, like, oh, I feel pleasure right now. Oh, the sensation feels nice and gooey. And if we associate like pleasure with gooey, pleasure with like, love, pleasure with fun, laughing, whatever, like the more our brain's like, oh, cool, I like that. Like that feels good. That makes me feel safe. But obviously, if it's new to us, if it's something that we're just kind of dabbling into right now, it takes practice. And I think you've mentioned so many beautiful ways that people can access pleasure. I
Yeah.
want to ask you a couple of quick rapid fire questions to kind
Okay.
of close our time
Yes.
together. So I'm putting you on the spot. So,
Ooh.
okay. So a song that makes you feel alive currently.
Okay, that's a Danish song. But so
Okay.
it's a band called Apaka, and it's like a group of young boys. They are like 20 years old, and they just sing about life in the most beautiful way. So it always gives me goosebumps.
Alpaca.
It gives me hope for the future that young boys can sing like that, like write lyrics like that. Yeah, that's nice.
Oh, okay. You'll have to share the link so I can send it to the immersion members. But I want to listen. Okay. A food that turns you on.
Okay, I think a peach.
Yes. Oh my God.
It's
Especially a Spanish. Yeah.
peach.
So good. Especially a Spanish peach. They're so good. A recent moment that surprised you with beauty, pleasure.
Mm, oh, whoa, at just a moment, I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe actually for me moving to Spain and like no, actually having a home because background story, I've been traveling for a lot of months, and then suddenly having a home kind of made pleasure suddenly feel more accessible, which
Mm-hmm.
surprised me a lot,
Yeah. Yeah.
actually.
Hmm. And then the last one, self-love to you means what?
Okay, self-love means showing up for myself,
Mm.
like prioritizing my well-being, even when that feels uh, like radical rest, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When it feels like I'm self-absorbed or something. If it feels lazy, then it's a constant like self-loving act for me to just keep prioritizing my well-being and
Mm.
my needs.
Oh, I love that. I love that. The cue is like when it feels like lazy, that's like actually I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
Um, okay, beautiful. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us, your wisdom, yeah, I feel really inspired to keep accessing my pleasure in different ways. Like you've given me so many ideas, and hopefully for all of the members listening, I'm going to drop the links of where they can find you, your website, anything you want me to share or you want to share right now currently that they might want to know about.
Mm, well, I'm working a lot around pleasure at the moment. So I run a course called Postpartum Pleasure, which is mostly for postpartum women. But even if you gave birth many, many years ago, it's still relevant. And I think it keeps becoming a part of my work. So if you wanna dive into pleasure, that's definitely something I'm talking a lot about.
Okay, cool. Well, I will share the links and you can send me the link to that song or that band.
Yes, I will,
Um,
even though you don't understand the
yeah, I'll
lyrics.
be like, I feel it. All right, Nana, thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, have a good day.